Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealteas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.com. Again, that's dealtohealteas.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast on all of your social media listening platforms. Also, make sure you guys check us out on our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network channel. There you can find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast that is there, and some other podcasts that is also coming your way. We started turning into a podcasting network because I wanted to bring you guys more opportunity and more content besides mine, right? And so make sure you guys follow us on the Deal to Heal podcasting network. And again, you will also be able to find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast there. On that podcast, I talk to other girl dads like myself about their fatherhood journey and the relationship of the daddy-daughter relationship. And so make sure you guys go and check that out, as well as the Deal to Heal with EJ's podcast is also there. Again, make sure you guys checking us out on our YouTube channel, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and one of the ways that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase in order for us to pay our bills. So our product of the week is our Purpose Journal, as well as our Purpose Planner. So I believe that we should journal in order to keep track of where we've been and where we are in our lives, as well as plan for our future. So you guys can get your copy of the Purpose Journal and the Purpose Planner from Amazon. The links is in the descriptions below. Make sure you guys go and check that out, right? So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Miss Darla. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I am good. First of all, let me say thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it, and I want you to know that. And so we're going to jump right into it. Do me a favor introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do.
Yes, and thank you, by the way, for allowing me to be here today. So it's wonderful. My name is Darla Ridlla, and I am a certified trauma-informed somatic coach. And I what that means is that I help people who have either experienced trauma or narcissistic abuse. I specialize with women, but I also do one-on-one sessions with men. Have a free support group for women as well. Podcaster, brand new podcast I just released a couple weeks ago. But the somatic part of it is that I am being trained in how to be aware of sensations in my body and teaching others to do that as well. And often when we are going through something, a traumatic experience or just something that's bothering us, those physical sensations usually connect to something in our past, often in childhood. And so what I do is help people. I kind of walk through that with a series of questions, and we help find the answers within themselves of how we can maybe have to sit in that painful experience for a couple of minutes, but also bring it to the forward and connect it to what's going on presently so they can work through that and then move forward and do better.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm familiar a little bit with the I don't even want to say it wrong, somatic
Yes.
movement, right? I'm aware a little bit of it because there is a young lady who's a part of an organization that I work with called the Forgiveness Mission, which we'll definitely talk about a little later. But that's one of the things that she brought to our workshops that we have was kind of leading our people through some somatic movements to help, even, within the body, right? But I don't personally know too much about it, so we definitely can dive a little bit more into that and what that is, and even the benefits that it offers, right? But before that, let's go back a little bit in your story because you mentioned about you know being involved in, I guess, a narcissistic. I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Uh,
Yes.
I might not say it right no more, so I'm glad I did it the first time.
You got it. Narcissistic. No, I'm not. It's okay.
Right.
Sure.
So
You
let's
can
go.
say Narc.
Right. So let's go back in your story a little bit and even and talk about that experience because I think especially now in different conversations, especially with the podcast arena and things of that nature, and excuse me, and it's kind of become a, I don't want to say cliche, but I have a problem with people that jump on a bandwagon of things, right? And it's just not this. It's just with everything in my life. Like that really bothers me. So, but it seems like it was just like this time period where everybody was like, "Oh, we learned a new word." You know what I'm saying? And so did everybody just jumped on and like, "Oh yeah, you're in this kind of relationship, and this happened to me, and this," and just start throwing the labels around. So I'm ranting, but let's go back to you and your story because you actually were in a relationship that this was present in. So let's talk a little bit about that and even how you began to find your way out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, you're right that just because someone's a jerk or they gaslight or they're mean to you, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a narcissist.
Mhm.
It is an overused word for sure. But they are out there. And so my experience was that 20 years ago, I met a very charming, handsome man, and this is often what they are. I've been in 3 different relationships with narcissists, and all of them have been good looking, some of them charming, covert, which that word means is they're not. I always, before I met my first, I always envisioned him being like a sleazy car salesman, that overt type that's so obvious, like slime and mean, but exact opposite it seems is what I attract, and these are the people that cover their crazy really well. And so you have this handsome man, he's paying a lot of attention to me. I feel quote unquote special because I'm picked. And then he goes through a very common tactic called love bombing, where my what I realized at the time and didn't know, realized later but didn't know at the time, let's put it that way, is that I was unhappy in the marriage I was currently in. And he picked up on that. And so he kind of moved in under the guise of being friends. How nice of him to move in and take his friend's wife. But he started to fill those gaps that I was feeling in my current relationship, paying a lot of attention to me, making me feel special, giving me gifts, just totally showering me with everything I've always wanted. Like, oh my God, here's the white horse and the white knight, and everything I've ever wanted. Perfect. And then over time, what happens is they will start this devalue stage where they don't pay as much of attention to you. They've gotten you hooked, basically. I've said this before, it's like an addiction. Once they hook you, they get you to fall in love with them. You're totally taken, all your defenses are down. They'll start the devalue. They won't pay as much attention to you. They'll kind of withdraw mentally or physically. And then they'll go to the discard. This is if they don't end the relationship. This is where, with me, it was a cycle that went over and over again, where he would either give me the silent treatment, or he would quote unquote punish me for things if I didn't follow his rules, or he would put me down, insult me, start crazy fights about stupid stuff, or make up things that never happened and say that I was crazy. I mean, all these ways to really get me to question my reality. And what happens is this cycle is they get faster and faster and faster. You get to that discard phase faster. And you never, ever get back to the persona that they originally gave you, which was that love bombing pretend person. But you're so hooked and you're so in love that you can't see the forest for the trees. And you want that person back. And they convince you it's your fault. You made me change, or you have changed, or you're not doing this or that. And with my experiences, it was a very gradual kind of effect. So I didn't even notice that I was being abused. I didn't notice that my personality was changing. I was losing my power, and very unsettling.
Yeah. And it sounds I like something you said. You said they covered their crazy well. I really like that, because I think I think that's in a lot of relationships, probably not just the narcissistic ones, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of people that hide their crazy very well, but you get into these relationships with them, and then, like you said, they begin to change, right? And change into almost this other person that you don't even recognize, and so then you're left to figure out, like, okay, is this true? And even going back to something else you said, because I remember having a conversation with someone and explaining to me just that. It's like they meet you as this one person that you fall in love with, and even after they change, you are still fighting, trying to, I guess, reconnect, or even trying to get them to go back to that person, because even like, yeah, I know they're treating me wrong right now, but that other person that I fell in love with is still in there somewhere,
right?
And so you're almost kind of like fooling yourself, or just believing, like, if I could just do the right things, to bring that person back, almost, So was that even some of the things that maybe you even felt at that time, just like, I know that person is in there, so I'll hang on a little bit longer?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're not dealing with reality, you're dealing with the potential, or what your past experience was. And it's very disarming, because no matter what you do, that original person never shows up. And then, of course, it's very easy for them, once again, to turn it on you. Well, you're too needy, you're too demanding. You shouldn't have done that. You talked about our relationship outside of the house, and I told you not to do that. Almost like scolding you like a child. But yeah. I felt like that so many times, and in all of those relationships.
Yeah, and it even goes back to just when we're talking about abuse, and really recognizing the different types of abuse it is. I mean, or there is, right? Because we oftentimes think about physical abuse, but then there's verbal abuse, there's mental abuse. There's even financial abuse, right? Where they get you to a position where even financially you're dependent on them, for everything. And then they use that as a sense of control to get you to do whatever it is that, they want you to do. And then I had a friend once, and she told me she had started having issues in her marriage, so we're having a conversation and she's like, he keeps accusing her of cheating. He's like, oh, I know you cheated on me or whatever. And she's like, I didn't, and like you said, trying to make you like question yourself. And, long story short, what came to find out, he was cheating. And I think he wanted a way out anyway. And so he just started, accusing her of cheating, and then she's second guessing herself and second guessing her actions. Like, okay, what did I do to even make him feel that way? When all the time he was just trying to cover his tracks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's projection. That is a very common thing that they do. They will project their own behavior onto you. While I was never accused of cheating, I know now looking back that he definitely was. I could just see it. I mean, he would openly flirt with women right in front of me, totally not even talk to me. And it was a way of, they call it triangulation, where they will play either me and the ex-wife or me and the daughter or me and another woman. And so what that also does is that furthers that addiction, the trauma bond. It adds to that cycle, because then you're like, now you're competing with this other person for their attention, and they just sit back and watch the two of you go at it. And they're like, huh, look what I did,
Yeah, that's that's definitely different. So let's talk about, your healing journey, because
Yeah.
even as once you begin to see yourself, it's like, okay, this is not working out for me, and then especially once you begin to recognize the traits and the signs, like, okay, something's not going, something's definitely not right with this picture, then you start excuse me, start looking for your way out, and begin that journey of your own healing. So what was that process like for you, and how was that journey to begin able to heal yourself, from not just that relationship, but probably even how it affected the other relationships that you're involved with, because it doesn't just stay, in the house, like, because it affects you personally. So if you change, then everything you touch changes too.
Absolutely. And it seems like I go through cycles. I'm going through another one right now, where I'm kind of pruning the trees per se.
Mhm.
But to go back to the original relationship, it was a long process. It took me a year to even realize, a year after I left, to even realize that I had been in an abusive relationship. I suffered from Stockholm syndrome, and if you're familiar with that, is when an abuser can get the person that's been abused to actually feel sorry for them, stick up for them. I was still seeing him about once a month. We go out to dinner. I was still calling him and texting him regularly. I could not break that addiction, that trauma bond. And it wasn't until I had a counselor say to me, hey, this is an abusive relationship. This is not normal. And I was in such denial. I thought she was crazy. Like, no, you don't understand. And through a series of that and friends and just really spiritually digging in, spending a lot of time at my spiritual center, both in classes, services, and volunteering, just really getting right with myself. It's a long process. It's been 11 years. And the pivotal moment for me is when I really came close to taking my own life. I was so beside myself because I was destroyed. Even though he asked for the divorce and I ultimately walked and left, I was devastated, and I didn't know how to go on. I was miserable. I didn't want to live without him, but I knew I had to, but I didn't know how to make that happen. And so I just cried out to my higher power that day. And I realized if I took my life, all those messages that he was telling people about how I was crazy, I just gave him all the ammunition he needed to say, see, I told you so. She's so crazy. She took her own life. What a miserable, I won't say, you know what. But and that would stop me. And so then when we cry out to our higher power, it's amazing how things will come into our life. 4 or 5 really strong women came into my life and held me up. That counselor, my spiritual center, and so it was this process, which has been an ongoing journey, always will be. While I am doing wonderfully better, I will always it will always be a part of who I am. But what I'm working towards is healing those parts as they come up. I still have a lot of anxiety and triggers that come up frequently, particularly in a relationship with other person, abusive or not. And so the goal is to have less triggers every day. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, yeah. And I love something that you said, that you were surrounded by a group of women that, supported you. And I think that is so important in all of our journeys of healing, that we don't try to do it alone. Right. And you're looking about getting to the point where you wanted to take your own life. And I'm very open about my own bout with suicidal ideation, because it was even after a divorce too. It was some other things, but it definitely was a divorce also that after I came out, that I found myself in this dark place, and was really contemplating even taking my own life. But like you, I was connected with some people who stayed with me and kind of helped me pull me out of that place. And then I joined a bereavement support group, because there was some other losses that I was going through at that time too. And that was how I kind of got my strength to come out of that place, right? Was the people that gathered around me and supported me. And so I definitely want the listeners to know, that is something that is so important to us, our communities and the communities that we build and the communities that we join. You know, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, right? So there's nothing that you're going through that somebody else isn't currently going through or have already been through. It's just a matter of finding those people, finding that support group, finding that one person or a group of people who understand what you're dealing with and able to encourage you and uplift you as you work your way through that process. And so I'm very happy that you had those women around you. And even in your own words, how important do you feel that was in your healing, to even help you get out of that space?
I wouldn't be here. I mean, to be quite frank, if I didn't have that spiritual center and that somewhere to go where people would check on me and hold me up and let me cry, and those women who said, "Don't call him, call me," I wouldn't be here. I would not be on this earth. And absolutely, you're so right. And I still to this day find that, and I'll say even in the support group that I run, because I am still facing a lot of the same challenges that they are, I get just as much out of it as they do. Because especially with narcissistic abuse, it's often misunderstood that people don't understand we've been brainwashed and we have to deprogram like a cult. And even some licensed therapists, unfortunately, I've had some issues with. Some not, some have. But I have found that being with other people that get it, like, oh yeah, I went through that too. Even if they don't have the answers, just having a knowing that they understand is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I think that just having that space where you can be vulnerable also,
Yeah.
and even as you mentioned, like with you even being in the space where you're even holding the event, but still able to say, "Hey, I'm not all the way there too." Like I'm still on a journey too. I think that is so important. So one of the things that I did when I went through this process myself, going to the bereavement, um, joining the bereavement group, right? I loved it so much, and it impacted me so much that I stayed and became a volunteer. And then even after I left, I think I stayed there for a year. And after I left, I started a nonprofit holding bereavement sessions. And there really is that space that you really can be vulnerable and be like, look, I'm dealing with this, and I talk about the grief wheel. I'm like, it's called a wheel for a reason, because it never stops rolling. What I
Right.
mean? There's not no end to it. It's like a circle. There's no end, there's no beginning, there's no end. It just keeps on going, and sometimes it rolls a little smoother, and then sometimes it hits some rocks along the way.
Yeah.
You have to deal with it. But I think that community just having that like-minded community and people of like experiences, just opens up so many doors for us to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to speak in our truth, and even learn and heal from, whatever we're dealing with one another, and I think, again, just knowing that you're not alone makes such a difference in your own healing. Just like, okay, I'm not the only one who fell for the tricks. I'm not the only one who, found, lost my way and is coming back, or, whatever it is. I'm not the only one. And sometimes when we go through things, a lot of times we feel like we are the only one, which makes it so much harder for us to get through it. So definitely, to all my listeners, whatever you're going through, there are so many resources now with the internet and Facebook and Instagram. Like, you could just type in support group for whatever, there's a dog walkers support group, I'm sure, you know what I mean? Like, whatever issue that you're dealing with, it should be, you could easily find, your crew, easily find your support group. Just make sure that you reach out, because you're not alone and you don't have to do it alone. Right. So,
Yes.
Darla, I want to jump a little bit into, but we talked about it a little bit, the somatic movement and the somatics of that you're learning now. How much of that played a part into where you are now, and how can that, help others that may be going through similar experiences or whatever trauma that they're going through? Because I know you don't just deal with that trauma, but other traumas. So how does it kind of work, if I can say it, put it that way? And then how can it be a help, with whatever trauma that we're dealing with?
Yeah. So the nervous somatics is basically the body. And so our nervous system stores trauma. A book I highly recommend, which is in very easy to understand terms, is The Body Keeps the Score. I think I always forget the guy's name, Vessel van der Kolk or something like that. But if you do The Body Keeps the Score, it's on Audible as well as Amazon. Excellent book. And it was kind of my first exposure to somatics. I'd never heard about it before. I had started to get a degree in psychology back when I lived in Washington State. So I'm kind of a psych geek and love people watching. And so it kind of struck my interest. It was kind of a process, actually, how I got into it. I started blogging about a year and a half ago, just about my personal experiences, what I still do. And that is a really vulnerable, this is what's going on in my life today, good or bad kind of thing. And I decided to turn that into a business. First came the course in February. I started this course 6 months ago, and it's about learning about the nervous system, how we store it. So how it kind of works, we've made it really easy to understand. We call it the traffic lights of tolerance. And so you have your green light. This is when you're grounded, when you're feeling good. You're on that walking trail, that hiking trail. The sun is shining. It's a real nice, cool breeze, and you're totally safe. And you can smell the evergreens, and you're so relaxed. And then you notice, hey, there's a mountain lion, and he's up on top of that rock. And I'm not feeling very good right now. And my heart is racing, and I'm preparing for danger. And that's what we call the yellow light, or sympathetic response, fight or flight. This is when your body is responding to or preparing for danger. And when there is a danger, it's very helpful. It goes way back to hunters and gatherers and all that. But what ends up happening in an abusive relationship was we get hyper vigilant and hyper alert. And so we're always, and I catch myself in this sometimes still, where I'm very vigilant, like you're almost, instead of looking for danger, you're expecting it at any moment all the time.
Mm.
And then there's that third stage, what we call the red light. This is shutdown. This is when you see a lot of depression, procrastination, people just not doing anything. Those people that just come home and watch TV all the time, or they don't do anything to better their lives. They feel stuck. And they're in that rut. And that's the tough position, because, if you're in sympathetic or the yellow light, it's easier to say, I'm going to take a walk. If you're in that red light, sometimes that's too much. If you're shut down enough and you're depressed enough, just getting out of bed can be a challenge. And I have been there, so I do understand that portion. So how it works into the sessions that I do is that when a client comes to me and they say, I want to work on this issue, I'll use an example because I just did this to myself this morning. I was on a camping trip and there was this guy. I like going to the national forest and I turned my phone off. I go every month for 4 days because I talk about trauma a lot and I need to get reset.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been going through some stuff these past couple weeks and needed to process. The guy had he had a generator and he did come over, super nice. Hey, I'm gonna be charging my fifth wheel 3 or 4 hours a day. I was already like, okay, fine. He was nice about it, but it ended up being way more. And so by last night, I'm getting mad. So this morning before I left the campsite, I went down to the lake with my dog and I'm like, okay, I am very mad at this guy because I feel like he misrepresented himself. And if he really wants electricity that bad, why doesn't he go where there's electric hookups?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I just like rageful angry at this guy? Why? And I'm starting to feel those sensations. I was having bad dreams. I was feeling off all day yesterday. I just felt this tension underneath my tightness in my chest. And I had to sit and say, what is going on here? And this has happened several times lately. And I realized, yeah, I'm mad at this guy, but the rage is not coming from him. It's coming from my anger at my father, how men over my lifetime have let me down. And he just happens to be a man. And the urge to go over to his campsite and scream and yell and take it out on him was overpowering. Which is why I went to the lake. Like, this is old Darla. We're not going to do this anymore. But I had to get in touch with that and sit at the lake for an hour. And my dog's the best listener ever. I highly recommend pets. And I literally just talked out loud to myself with the dog beside me and worked through that. And I felt all of those sensations in my body dissipate. When I pinpointed it, that I had some really frustrating experiences on the dating world that I was still pretty angry about. And then it just went all the way back to dad.
Mm-hmm.
This poor guy is about to be on the receiving end of something he really never did, right? Mm-hmm. And so then I could calm myself down. So if I got back and he happened to wave, that I wasn't going to lunge and just blow it off. Like, you're leaving now. Just let it go. And so there are similar things that, maybe what do I find the hardest is folks that have parents that are narcissists. I did not have that experience, only relationships, but it's so hard for them because they, as a child, depended on them for their very well-being. And so physically and psychologically, a small child cannot believe their parent is bad per se or does bad things. And so as an adult, they'll say, I don't understand as an adult why I feel so traumatized, why I can't say no, why I am having this anxiety attack. And then I'll say, because that's what you were trained to do as a small child. So we need to go back to that little girl and say, you didn't have a voice then, but you have one now. What would you say if you could have said it back then?
Yeah. That is so good. That is so good. I two things that you mentioned that I really connect with. Number one, I am a people watcher. I love watching people, right? I usually wear shades all the time because I just like to watch people. People are so interesting, especially when they don't know that you're watching. So, so I love that. And then you talked about, getting out and going out in nature. And I really love that too. And I think that I used to walk on a treadmill, right, and run. I used to jog on my treadmill in my house. And one day I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go to the park because there's a park near me, and I just went and walked around in the nature part of the park, and it changed like my whole experience of walking, because I'm a walker. I love walking, and so even now I just joined a hikers group, and so that I can, start actually going to like the natural parks and things like that and hiking. But I think there's being out in nature and reconnecting with nature, especially when we're going through something. I think as great as our cities are, and I live in Chicago, so great as the skyscrapers are and all of that, I think it takes away from our energy and our connection, with the world itself. You know what I'm saying? So I think when we actually get back out in nature and just like the nature without all the extra stuff, what I'm saying, without the generators,
Right.
we're actually, able to go down by the lake and maybe skip some rocks or something. I think those experiences help us to reconnect with the energy of the earth itself, and even our emotional energy and the things that we go through. I think it helps us even to begin to even process even our minds even more and process what we're dealing with, in nature. I just think it adds so much value just to be able to take a walk, and reconnect. I haven't tried grounding yet. That's when you like take off your shoes and walk in the bare grass or hug trees. Like I haven't tried that part yet. But I'm sure that I will at some point. And but I really do believe that there is just a space that we get to that it's almost like you mentioned earlier, a resetting. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, let's reset everything, my mind, my emotions, everything, and just kind of release. And I think we can get that from nature. Definitely if you need a therapist and all of that, definitely do that too. You
Yes.
know, and then if you go to church, because that's one of my things too, it's not either or. Like it's God and therapy; they go hand in hand. Actually,
Right.
that's a perfect trio: God, therapy, and nature.
There
I
you
think
go.
I'll make a shirt with that or something.
I love
I
it.
think that would be like the perfect trio. All three of those will help us to recenter who we are and be able to deal with whatever it is that we're dealing with. I love it. I just thought of that.
Yeah.
So, Darla, excuse me. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for being on and for sharing your story and your expertise. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, advice, inspiration, however you feel, motivation, whatever it is that's on your heart. I want you to have the last word and leave us with a word of advice. Also, share your social media handles and things of that nature. But while you think about that, I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. While you think about that, to my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you guys have ever thought about starting your own podcast, make sure you get your copy of the ebook Start Your Podcast Now. You can get it from ebooksbyejames.com. I was constantly being asked on how to start a podcast, and so I just wrote the ebook, and I know it's effective because not only did I write it, but I turned it into a course that I now teach at high school and elementary schools for students to teach them how to start their own podcast. So you can get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now ebook at ebooksbyejames.com. Make sure you guys go there and get your copy. The link will definitely be in the descriptions below. So make sure you guys check that out. Also, make sure you check out my main website, which is dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org, because my mission, as well as the podcast, is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So make sure you guys go there and check that out. You'll also be able to find the link there to book me to come out to be a speaker at your next event, or even to host and facilitate a workshop for you and your students if you're at a school, or your organization if you're at a corporation. So make sure you guys go check that out. Also, ebooksbyejames.com, where all of my ebooks are. You can find the men's ebook. You can find the Core Four, which is the core four values that every daughter should get from her father. That is the ebook also that we use with the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. We actually have a segment of the Girl Dad Discussions podcast where we discuss the Core Four ebook. There's also another ebook called Forgiving Me, the Four Steps to Self Forgiveness. Again, all of those ebooks can be found at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. And also make sure you guys check out our inspirational t-shirt line that also has our podcast merch. It's our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it from the Deal to Heal podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. But also go check out our inspirational teas, our inspirational quotes. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. So make sure you guys go check out our t-shirts so you can be inspired all day, right? And last but not least, I talked a little bit about it earlier. The last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month. We used to do them every quarter, but now we do them every other month. So whenever you listen to this, either one just ended or there's one coming up. And what we do, we talk about everything forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, what it means to forgive, who forgiveness is for. And even there is a part that we talk about forgiveness and how it affects your body, in which a friend of mine leads us through some somatic movement exercises to help us even deal with the unforgiveness and the forgiveness that we hold in our bodies. But there is workshop is absolutely free. So you guys can go to forgivenessmission.com. Again, that's forgivenessmission.com to sign up for the next workshop. Or you can go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop held by the Forgiveness Mission in order to register for that absolutely free yet super impactful workshop that we do every other month. So again, if you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to this, there's one coming up or there's one just ended. But go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for the next forgiveness workshop. Ms. Darla, once again, I want to say thank you so very much for being on and for sharing your story. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. And thank you again for letting me be here. My last words would be, this is kind of my mantra as well as I'm re-navigating relationships, is instead of focusing on how you feel about a person, whether that's romantic, family, or a boss or something, really focus on how you feel in their presence. How do they make you feel? Do you feel physically and mentally safe? Or are you feeling anxious? And if you are, just to really look at that, that is often an indicator that it might be a relationship that either needs repair or needs to be discarded.
All right. Do you want to leave us with your social media handles?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website, and that is highvaluewoman.info. And on there, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I also have the link to my podcast. I'm also on Apple and Spotify, as well as, Amazon Music, I think. I'm on, and all those links are there. And if you're willing, I'd love to extend a 20% discount. One-on-one sessions. There is a landing page. There's going to be a link and it's highvaluewoman.info/deal2 heal.
All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E.James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.